Here I am in the boat. This is where the main operations happen, and most of the work is done on this thing here. It's called a grinding pedestal. It makes the winches go round. You can hear that going round. So with this I can pull in ropes that have about 3 tons. That's like 2 family cars on it. Most of the rope comes down the centre of the boat here. In fact, we've got 2.5 kilometres of rope here. You can see again that they're doing a bit of work, so it's a bit messy at the moment. I can tell you we need an awful lot of colours so you can remember which is which. And if you're not doing the work on the grinding, you seem to be doing the tidying up. That's the hardest thing, tidying up. I'm not very good at that. We've got 2 coach roofs, so these things here are called coach roofs. We could have had one, but it wouldn't have looked very cool, and it's quite heavy to have 2. I actually said to my designers when we were looking at building this that I wanted to be able to drive my boat with my pyjamas on. Incidentally, being French, they didn't really get that. It was a kind of a joke. But here's the wheel, and you can see when I drive it, my head is the only thing showing from the top, so you're able to keep quite dry, quite warm, quite cosy. In here, we call this bit the conservatory. We've got 2 conservatories. It's really called a cuddy. It's like this so that you can kind of be in touch with what's going on out here, but you're not getting soaking wet. You know, normally a boat of this size would be sailed with 10 big, hefty, burly, bearded fellas. 5 of them would be asleep and 5 of them would be working the boat. So the problem is, for me on my own, or even with just 2 people, you can't get out of the elements. So this allows me to get out of the elements but stay in touch with what's going on. Should we go inside? So here we are inside the boat. As you can see, it goes from here, and actually this is the only place I can stand up. When I get to 5 paces, I got to duck down. So this is the only place on either side where we can stand up. There ain't much in here, it's all black, all bare carbon, keep it nice and light. So the important things are the kitchen. Here's the kitchen, my little cooker, and the sink. We fill up the kettle. The kettle sits in the cooker. You tear open the bag, you pour the hot water in. Don't look at it, just eat it. Not very nice. There's the toilet. Not very good. We do have a development toilet here that we're working on, but they're fairly simple. Underneath here is the engine and generator, so that makes the power. And if you look all the way up forwards up here, you can see all the sails. That's one of the heaviest parts of the boat, and all the sails need to live on one side or the other, just like this side here. So when we turn the boat from one side to the other, I've got to physically lump all this all the way over that side. It wasn't in the brochure when I started doing this game, I can tell you that. Behind these oilskins over here we can see a bed. It's a fairly comfortable bed if I get it down. Nice thick foam, actually custom made. We've got 2 inches of hard foam, 2 inches of soft foam. And that's where we sleep for minimum probably an hour, maximum 3 hours at a time. Further back then, the nerve centre of the boat. So this is where it all happens. Up here, this jangle of wires and everything is actually the media station. Turn it into a little mini studio. Here's my camera, and we can transmit. We will be transmitting live to sport5.co.uk during the race, so you'll be able to follow our exploits, what's going on, how's it going, fighting the giant octopuses. Up here we've got the instruments and the autopilot. Very important, the autopilot. Without the autopilot you can't really race, so we've got to keep them powered up, keep them happy, well fed, nurtured. This is where the action happens. The computer here is a nav PC, so this controls our routing. When I say routing, it's like a sat-nav system. We tell it where we want to go, and it decides with the weather the best way to go. Now we all know what a sat-nav's like. Sometimes you can go to the same place from the same starting point and you'll go a different way every time. So I'll run 3 different sat-navs on here, and that is really, really important. You can spend 20 million quid on your boat, but if you go the wrong way, it's no good at all. Satellite phone's over here. Pick up the phone and speak to the missus, ask what she's having for dinner. Life raft sits just over here, little yellow canister here. So if we have a big problem, as I've done before, this thing can come off and be out of action pretty well. And actually, if the boat turns upside down, you probably can't see because there's a black hole of colour down there, but there's an escape route straight out the back of the boat. Safety first. Safety is no accident. Here we are on the foredeck of the boat. Entire boat's made of carbon fibre, and actually this forehatch where the sail's coming out is quite a good example of how the boat's made. Here you can see, I don't know if you can see how thin the carbon fibre is. You can probably see when I push it that it bends. So this we call monolithic carbon, it's just solid carbon. And then you can see this part here, which means it's got a core in it. So we've got thin layer of carbon, and then a very light structure in the side. And that's what makes this boat so light. That carbon there is no carbon on this boat that's as thick as that. So I put it right back, the old satellite dive, so there's a satellite dish that sits inside there and is gyro stabilised. You can imagine the boat's moving around all the time. And this thing's got a point at the satellite to keep our communications going. Not just for media, weather forecasting, very, very important. Without the weather forecast, we're not going to do a good job. Coming back here, we've got our dagger boards, one here and one there. So these things are designed to stop the boat from going sideways, to go maximum forwards and minimum sideways. They're important pieces of kit. They're quite vulnerable, you know, they stick right down 4 metres into the sea. So if you hit something with one of these things, got a giant squid around it or something like that, end up with some holes in it, some chunks, and sometimes you've got to cut them in or out to make them work properly. Then we've got the mast. The mast is carbon fibre, believe it or not, goes up 30 metres and only weighs about 180 kilos. Carry a maximum of 650 square metres of sail area. That's like 4 tennis courts. Can you imagine being in bed, asleep, while the boat's sailing along with 4 tennis courts up? It's really scary. And the mast is held up by this stuff here, which is called PBO. It's a static fibre. It's the things that the tethers that hold the wheel. It's extremely strong. I think it's something like 80% lighter than stainless steel rod, 50% stronger. The only thing with it is it only lasts for 1 year and it's very expensive. So as I said, that holds the mast up, and if you were to imagine that when we're sailing along, and you were to put your hand underneath the mast here, your hand would see 20 tons of pressure. That's a flat hand. And then just back here, you might not be able to see, but this is where, from the helmsman, where the instruments are, so you can see them properly. So when you're looking forwards, they're exactly in your line of sight. And a little light here, that tiny little light is an LED spotlight which lights up the sails, operated from the cockpit, so you can, in the middle of the night, be able to light up the sails and see what the trim is like. So this is Alex Thomson, on board Hugo Boss, ready for the Jacques Vabre. Don't forget, you can follow us on sportsvibe.co.uk.